Silver King was a pro wrestler from Mexico. Perhaps one of the most important reasons why his career deserves the spotlight is because he's somehow one of the most underrated pro wrestlers ever. He's one of the best wrestlers to seemingly have been almost completely forgotten or overlooked by the majority of wrestling fans and critics, at least until today. When the best Mexican pro wrestlers are being discussed, we usually hear lots of praise for Negro Casas and El Hijo del Santo, and understandably so, since those two are certainly legendary luchadors. Sometimes we also hear praise for luchadors who are arguably less deserving of all that praise than Silver King is. El Dandy and Satanico, for example. Although, who are we to doubt El Dandy? Silver King seems to be overlooked in virtually every discussion that is about the best Mexican wrestlers of all time, even though he was one of the most talented Mexican wrestlers of his generation. El Hijo del Santo may have been more graceful, Negro Casas may have been more thoughtful and detail-oriented, and Dr. Wagner Jr. may have been more charismatic and entertaining at times. But none of those outstanding luchadors were arguably able to adapt to different styles of the wrestling world quite as well as Silver King was able to. Wherever King went, he stood out as a spectacular and effective worker. He was trained in Mexican Lucha Libre, but quickly adapted to the Luchares style when he wrestled for Universal in Japan. Whenever he returned to Japan, he kept showing that he was able to adapt to Japanese pro-res arguably better than any Mexican wrestler had ever done. Of course, Mil Máscaras and Dos Caras used to impress crowds in the 1970s, and Dr. Wagner Jr. did quite well for himself in Japan as well. However, King's ability to adapt and combine styles he encountered in Mexico and Japan was exceptional. Silver King was a natural in any style and country he wrestled in. Even when King was hired by WCW, he understood he had to try to find a way to make his ridiculously short WCW TV matches work. He wasn't selfish, and while certainly not afraid to hit cool-looking moves, he seemed more concerned about getting everyone in the match over. Despite never getting a push in WCW, he played his role well, and his matches were not dull. He was deceptively agile, as he was a somewhat stocky luchador with a powerful upper body, but he was able to fly around like many of the smaller luchadors. His athleticism helped him to be able to hit exciting moves seemingly with tremendous ease. Not only was he able to shine whenever he was on offense, he was also able to make his opponents look good through his ability to combine bumping, selling, timing, and understanding. Not too much is known about Silver King's first 5 years in the wrestling business. King made his debut in November 1985. During his early years, he was still a masked wrestler, but after he lost his mask to El Hijo del Santo in a mask versus mask match on November 13, 1987, King started wrestling without a mask. Despite losing his mask so early in his career, which used to be a big deal in Mexican Lucha Libre, King ended up having a very successful career. It was revealed that King was the son of legendary luchador Dr. Wagner. King's brother, Dr. Wagner Jr., would also become a famous wrestler. Silver King's career from 1991 onward is a lot more researchable, since there is a lot of information and footage available about King's career from 1991 onward. 1991 was the year that King became a very good worker. It probably isn't a coincidence that 1991 was also the year King started wrestling in Japan more often. Gran Hamada's Federación Universal de Lucha Libre, also known as Hamada's Universal Wrestling Federation, was a Lucha Libre league in Japan that was the first league to successfully be a Mexican-style wrestling league in Japan. The league was basically the predecessor of Michinoku Pro, a league that was very popular amongst pro-res fanatics on the internet back in the 1990s. And which was more of a luchares league, a hybrid of Japanese and Mexican wrestling. While Michinoku Pro probably should be considered pro-res with strong Lucha Libre influences, Universal was an actual full-on Mexican-style Lucha Libre league that operated in Japan. King did well during his tours for Universal, and you could say that his run in Universal in 1991 and 1992 was when he first was able to put his name on the map of international wrestling in a truly successful way. King didn't only wrestle in Mexico and Japan in 1992, he also had a match in the United States. On June 16, 1992, Silver Cain and El Texano, billed as Silver Cain 1 and Silver Cain 2, wrestled Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes in a match that was quite a clash of styles at WCW Clash of the Champions. It was a random appearance that only happened because WCW needed a Mexican team for their World Tag Team Tournament, and at least they picked arguably the best Mexican team around at the time. So somebody in WCW actually did their homework. This would be the first and only WCW appearance of King until he started working there on a regular basis 5 years later. In 1993, Silver Cain started appearing on cards of Japanese hardcore or garbage wrestling leagues, first for the league known as Wing, and in 1994 and 1995 in IWA Japan. King usually teamed with El Texano on these shows, and they oftentimes wrestled against the Headhunters, a mediocre American tag team that was popular among hardcore wrestling fans, partially because of them being heavy wrestlers who could perform moves that were usually not performed by workers of their weight category, like moonsaults. By 1994, Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre, CMLL, had become Silver Cain's main league and would remain his main league until mid-1997, while still appearing on Japanese tours quite regularly. CMLL, which was founded in 1933, is the oldest wrestling league that is still currently active. 1995 was one of Silver Cain's most interesting years because his level of work had noticeably improved, and he had become an excellent worker, and at times even a great worker. In 1996 and 1997, he wasn't able to really show that excellence as much, though. This wasn't necessarily King's fault, and it was mostly due to CMLL's booking. King mostly seemed to be booked in matches with workers who weren't really able to go all out with him. Emilio Charles Jr., La Fiera, the Headhunters, and the overrated Miguel Perez Jr. come to mind. When King turned heel towards the end of his CMLL run, the focus in his matches were more his heel heat and interaction with the crowd, and there was a little bit less emphasis on the wrestling. And a lot of the trios matches King was involved in were matches with short falls that often seemed to lose momentum in between the falls. Of course, whenever he was in the ring with Negro Casas or Dr. Wagner Jr., it was really enjoyable. When he wrestled a guy like Felino, who could still go in those days, it was certainly also lots of fun to watch King work. King's first run as a regular competitor in CMLL lasted from 1993 through May 1997. He would return to CMLL as a regular in May 2001. The part of Silver Cain's career from mid-1997 through mid-2000s was probably the most frustrating part of his career, at least from a wrestling fan's perspective, despite still being in his prime. This wasn't necessarily because of his work, but it was because after aligning himself with Konnan's Promo Azteca League, King started working for World Championship Wrestling, an American wrestling company that at the time was trying to go head-to-head with the World Wrestling Federation, the infamous sports entertainment company you may have heard of. His run in Promo Azteca is pretty much forgettable, as he was usually involved in matches featuring wrestlers that were huge stars at the time but weren't known for being good in-ring performers, like Konnan and Vampiro Canadiense. Promo Azteca was a place where Konnan's buddies and other workers who were looking for a fresh start, most of them being former AAA workers who had become unhappy in AAA, would attempt to make Promo Azteca the third major Mexican league, which was an attempt that would come to an end by the end of 1998 when the league folded. While appearing on WCW TV helped make a larger number of people aware of Silver Cain's name, working for WCW also meant that he was underutilized, underpushed, and became used to performing 4-minute matches in front of crowds that weren't really there with the intention to watch him or see good wrestling in general. On the bright side, if he would have worked for the World Wrestling Federation, he probably would have had an even worse time. Because at least in WCW, he was involved in some fun matches against workers who were able to work cool spots and good in-ring sequences with him. He showed flashes of excellence in basically every match he was a part of. For example, the June 11, 1997 trios match he was involved in at a Saturday night taping was a fun 5-minute match that was on its way to being a good match, but it should have gotten more time and attention from the company. King's push in WCW seemed to gradually decline over time. It seemed that in 1997 and 1998, at least there was still some hope for King eventually getting somewhat of a decent run in WCW's cruiserweight division. However, in 1999, his push declined below a push that was already too low to begin with, and he rarely appeared on the main TV show Nitro anymore, as he appeared mostly on the B and C shows, Thunder, Saturday Night, and Worldwide, in addition to the house show appearances. On October 21st, 1999, Silver King and Juventud Guerrera versus Kaz Hayashi and Blitzkrieg took place on WCW Thunder, and it was a match that was actually a very good 10-minute match and easily the best match of King's WCW career. It's even one of King's 30 best matches of his career. On December 21st, 1999, in Salisbury, Maryland, in a match taped for WCW Worldwide, King lost to IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion Jushin Thunder Liger in a non-title match that lasted 4 minutes and 43 seconds. The match was excellent while it lasted, but it was obviously way too short to be really considered a very good match. It's a shame such a promising match took place on a C show, and it was in line with how this league didn't really seem to care about these talented wrestlers. In early 2000, this trend of Silver King being underutilized would continue, as King rarely appeared on Thunder and mostly appeared on the C shows and house shows. His run in WCW eventually came to an end in April 2000, despite it seemed he finally was going to get somewhat of a push again, when it appeared Stacy Keibler was going to be the valet of the Fabulous One. He ended up not being used by WCW anymore, and was eventually let go later that year. This was the best thing that could have happened to his career, and what followed were some of King's most interesting years of his career. Perhaps the most interesting part of Silver King's career was the year and a half he spent working New Japan Pro Wrestling tours. Despite being 33 years old at the time, 2001 was King's peak as an overall in-ring performer. While being away on New Japan Pro Wrestling tours on occasion, CMLL was his home league. In mid-2001, he started working under the name Black Tiger III in CMLL. He ended up working as Black Tiger in New Japan Pro Wrestling as well, as it was New Japan Pro Wrestling who had picked King to portray the third incarnation of the famous Black Tiger gimmick. The first two Black Tigers were Mark Rocco in the 1980s and early 1990s, and Eddie Guerrero in the mid-1990s, respectively. King really did a good job at working the masked Black Tiger gimmick, and yet still was an excellent worker at the time, not getting overly caught up in the new gimmick. King's run in New Japan Pro Wrestling only lasted from early 2001 to mid-2002. Between 2003 and 2008, King's tours to Japan would be for New Japan Pro Wrestling's rival league, All Japan Pro Wrestling, instead. King's best singles match took place in All Japan Pro Wrestling when he wrestled Loki on October 26, 2003, in an excellent match. He also had a couple of memorable matches with Katsuhiko Nakajima in All Japan Pro Wrestling. In late 2005, King was picked to portray the villain Ramses in the movie Nacho Libre in 2006. The story goes that about 30 other luchadors were considered for the role, which apparently included luchadors like Shocker, Universo 2000, and Kanek. King's matches in AAA were usually not that much more interesting than his matches in WCW. By 2008, AAA certainly was not a league that provided a good environment for workers to have matches on a high level, unlike back in 1992 through 1996, when AAA was at its peak. In the weeks leading up to Triple Mania 18 in 2010, which was held in Mexico City, King started wrestling under the name Silver Cain. This was because the Boxing and Wrestling Commission, which tends to be particularly strict in Mexico City, didn't like the fact that King was wrestling with a mask while using the Silver King name, as he had officially lost his mask while wrestling as Silver King in 1987. King spent quite a bit of time in AAA during the final decade of his career, and by 2014, King, while still decent, was no longer in his prime and relied more on solid rudo brawling without the exciting wrestling we used to see from him earlier in his career. King's career and life came to an end on May 11th, 2019, during a match with Juventud Guerrera in Camden, London, England, when King suffered a fatal heart attack during the match. He was 51 years old. After watching over 100 matches from over 25 different years of his 34-year career, it can be safely said that Silver King was a very talented professional wrestler, worthy of more praise than he usually has been getting. His hard work, dedication, and passion got him really far in the cutthroat business he was involved in. With his induction into the Hall of Talent, it's now time to celebrate the excellence of the luchador who was known as Silver King. This is my overall conclusion of Silver King's career.